Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, we are going to have a former Major League catcher on the show, and we're going to find out how does a former Major League catcher end up in the returns space. So a little interesting story here. I'm sure that we're going to find out, but very interested to talk to Spencer Kieboom, who is the co-founder and CEO at Pollen Returns. And we're going to talk about the returns industry in general, what's the current state of that, and how Pollen Returns is helping to address that and really facilitate making these returns a better experience overall, I think, for the retailer and also for the customer themselves too. And I will say personally that it's very challenging for me to make returns happen. I have some things laying around that I never returned, and I get grief about that all the time at home. But Spencer, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Excited to hop on here and love what you're doing here with the New Warehouse Podcast.
Thank you. And definitely happy to get you on here and hear about this. We know that returns is certainly a challenge. But before we dive into all the, I guess, full-on returns talk, why don't you kind of give us a little bit about your background here and how you kind of came to this idea to tackle this problem around returns?
Well, the idea stems from before my playing days of baseball. So
really? Okay.
The idea stems all the way back as a freshman in college where I went to Clemson and really, pursued a professional baseball career after playing at Clemson, which was a great time, and had the opportunity to pretty much touch every single level, pretty much live up and down the East Coast as well as even on the West Coast for a little bit. And then had the opportunity to play in the big leagues for parts of 3 years. And nice. It was an awesome time, always been a catcher, and it was a lot of fun to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had this, so I'm curious, was the dream to solve the returns problem, the dream before baseball, or was baseball the first dream? How did that kind of come about?
Well, baseball is, I actually love the term dream. Baseball is definitely the first dream.
Okay.
Baseball for me is something that's, talk about fortunate. You're in such a unique environment. You're around so many different people. You're around so many different cultures sitting in a locker room. You have to deal with different personalities. You don't just show up to the big leagues and get to go catch a former Cy Young winner, right? You have to create validity. You have to build trust. You have to look at data. How do you look at the data? It's, just because somebody's hitting 330 on a fastball inside, that's great. My question is, are these day games? Are these night games? Are these mid relievers? Are they all starters? How many outs are there? They're running as a scoring position. And there's so many questions and layers that go deeper. And to me, it's something I absolutely loved about the game, especially being behind the plate and putting that plan together and trying to be in tandem because, as much as baseball is a team sport, it's really more individual. And the only real team constant aspect of working together is catching and pitching. And so, to me, what I learned and harnessed in the game really is something that's transitioned over to what I'm doing at Pollen. And I believe you can make it applicable to anything of what I learned while playing.
Interesting. Yeah. And it's great to hear too, I guess, kind of that analytical side to it and that analysis that you're saying, like, for example, was it a day game or a night game that they're performing at level, which is pretty interesting. Cause I mean, I think that, translates over into operations as well. When we look at, for example, like consumer behavior, right? Like, oh, we got a lot of orders. Like, well, was it because, this factor or that factor? Like what led into that and what's really making that happen? So I'm curious, I mean, how did kind of that experience, now lead you and help you into being a founder and CEO of a company?
Well, you kind of already hit the nail on the head, right? And, I won't do too many baseball analogies, I promise. But at the same time, some of my favorite coaches, it was and mentors in the game were, from call it like a mechanical perspective at this for our conversation right now is, you come into the dugout and let's say, you're late on a fastball inside and you break your bat or, you blow your hands up. And, my favorite hitting coaches, for example, they wouldn't go, "Hey, you're late." Well, duh.
Yeah.
Thank you. My hands, I feel like, they're needles right now based off of what just happened. But why am I late? What was the cause to the effect that was happening? Sure, you didn't start on. Yeah, but why didn't I start on time? Or what's causing me to start late? Or what's causing me to delay? And I look at pretty much every problem like that, right? It's, why are returns costing retailers hundreds of billions of dollars? Why is that happening? Like, what is the reason behind that? Is it the product? Is it the shipping? Is it loss? Is it theft? Is it shrinkage? Is it, what is underneath that cost line, is the first question. And diving in on that. And then really what's for us, what's the market ready for? You could have the best idea in the world. You could have the best concept and the best technology, but that doesn't mean everybody's ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's such a great point to understand. I mean, it's one thing, like you said, to point out the problem, right? And, we see regarding returns, I mean, there's tons of articles out there about, how returns has been growing consistently and how consumer behavior, is shifting this returns problem, right? But what's the solution behind that? So I think, you guys at Pollen are trying to address that solution in a certain way. So why don't you tell us, I guess, about Pollen Returns and what it is that you guys do actually in the return space?
Yeah, so we look at ourselves as a sales augmentation platform for retailers to parlay their returns into more sales. And, looking back, somebody could say like, well, okay, that's obvious, sure, I get it. But, going back and call me crazy. Another one of my favorite podcasts, I'm not trying to shout it out here, but I like the Founders podcast. I have read so many books off of it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, but he was talking through Jeff Bezos' shareholder letters. I'm not that crazy. I'd rather listen to somebody paraphrase everything that's going on, right? And and he's going back to the early 2000s, and something that always struck me, and this was even when I was playing, was Jeff Bezos talks about like in the early 2000s that in order to create operational efficiencies, you have to create a better customer experience, and a better customer experience then leads to more operational efficiencies, which now lowers your cost, provides better data and better insights. And it sounded crazy in the early 2000s, but look what they've executed on over the last 20 plus years. And look what they've been able to accomplish. And to me, I look at returns as that same piece because returns are a part of the buying experience, if we like to admit it or not.
Yeah.
They are part of the buying experience. Although it makes up, let's say, 20% of your inventory coming back, we'll use 20% for our conversation just for the sake of it. It's pretty much the industry standard number. It affects essentially 100% of your consumer's buying decision. That policy, that form of going through the return, that function that the consumer has to deal with affects 100% of their buying decision.
Yeah.
And it's strong at the end of the day. I mean, it's so strong that Zappos in 2003 offered the free return and everyone followed suit because Zappos tripled their revenues for 3 years straight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right after they offered the free return. And it created word of mouth. It lowered customer acquisition costs. Yeah, sure, it costs more money, but you know what? The cost of the cart abandonment that they had was way more than what the returns were costing them. And so they said, you know what? Screw it. Let's try to flip-flop this. And that's what they were able to accomplish, and that's why folks followed suit. But once it becomes the standard and the norm, things seem to settle back on par as to where they were before. But you still have that growth, and you still maintained it.
Interesting. So, I mean, in that same regard, and I think, I think part of that too, when you talk about the first offering of those free returns and then how that trend kind of took off. I mean, I think that also from a consumer perspective of, ordering certain type of things online, like that changed the mindset a little bit, right? Because you look at a Zappos, like shoes, and I order online, it's like, oh, I can't try them on, right? But if there's free returns, like I could order, I may be between two sizes, let me get the two sizes and return the one that doesn't fit, right? Which is part of what's happened to make this returns boom in a sense, right, on the operational perspective, from people ordering multiple different sizes, returning what doesn't fit. But there's a lot of conversation that I'm seeing recently, like in the last month, 2 months or so, around people moving back to and brands and retailers moving back to charging for those returns. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's a smart thing to do, not the right thing to do? I mean, what are your thoughts around that?
If I had to put a blanket statement on it, I would say not the best idea. But again, everybody's different. There's no out of the box solution for all retailers to handle returns. There's not. I mean, there's so many different industries. There's so many different segments. I mean, even when you get down to fashion and apparel, there's so many different segments that fill it. And so, as the blanket statement, which obviously does not apply to everybody, but ultimately, if you have to make one, my blanket statement is it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Because I'll use an example is, last year we saw excess inventory headlines everywhere. Right. And that being said, we also saw retailers starting to charge for returns. That charge for the return, don't get me wrong, is there some money offsetting, obviously, a cost? Yes. But those hundreds of billions of dollars, it's less than a fraction as to what the shipping costs are. That charge for the return is more of a deterrent.
Right.
It's a deterrent for you, the consumer, to not send it back. It's a deterrent for the consumer to basically maybe, just hold on to it and say, well, whatever, it's good enough, ordeal. And so it's a way to reduce the return. But ultimately, for example, and it's funny because last year American Eagle was on one of the headlines. Hey, they're charging for returns. They're not charging for returns this holiday season.
Yeah.
But they've been bucketed as a company that's charging for returns. And it's amazing how people don't forget. And that now it takes time for them to back out of that. And the one thing, if I had to guess, as to with a strong, a strong confidence as to what was American Eagle measuring at the time and why did they make that decision to charge for returns, was they had an excess inventory problem. That's why they did it.
Yeah.
What were they measuring in the holiday season? What was the number one metric? Cart abandonment.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why they flipped it back.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, right? Because you think about, I think when you look at like apparel and shoes and things like that, things that, I guess for the kids that don't know out there, that we used to actually go to stores and try things on in the fitting room, right? You don't get the ability to do that for a lot of apparel, shoe brands and things like that. And especially if you're ordering from them from the first time, right? You don't know like what's the cut like, maybe it's different, right? When you have to, I think to your point, when you have to pay for a return, then you see that at like you said, the cart abandonment, you see that at the checkout and you're like, oh, I don't know. Cause I'm not sure if this is going to fit me or not. And it's going to cost me more money to send it back. And then I got to get another one. And, all of a sudden it just becomes like just this pain in the ass, basically. Right. I
mean, exactly. I mean, like, let's paint, try to paint a picture, verbally here. And let's imagine you're browsing, social media And how many times do we see, ads for products that we're unfamiliar with the brand.
Yeah.
And we're going, hey, I like that, right? Like, I like that jacket or I like that shirt. And you click the link and the next thing go to the website. The first thing that pops up is, hey, Kevin, here's 15% off.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, X, like, get out of here. Like, I don't want it right now. I don't even know if I'm going to buy anything. I'm not giving you my email that fast. Like, chill. Then you look and you go, I do like this product. And then you're sitting there and you're like, all right, even if there's a sizing chart, you're like, well, am I a medium? Am I a large? Like, or am I large or not? If you're going to be between sizes ultimately, no matter what, because we've all had that experience. And then you're going, okay, well, regardless, if they're charged, I haven't even gotten to that point yet. But let's say I'm about to check out, let me check that return policy, because over 80% of consumers do this as well. And they go, I'm charging for the return. Right there, you lost them. Right? That consumer, that cart is gone. Yeah. Right? It doesn't matter. See ya, forget the 15%. Essentially, it's gone. On the other side of this too is, let's just say it was free and they have up top on the banner, we offer free returns. You already know they're free returns. You still have the issue of the consumer going, well, what if it doesn't fit? Yeah. Like even if I order 2, what if it doesn't fit? Like, I don't want to, I got to print a label, or I got to go take it and drop it off. Yeah. It becomes this burden and to the consumer, but the burden to the consumer stops you from buying. And ultimately, though, the real burden then lies on the retailer. Even if the consumer, now let's say the consumer has bought it, the real burden and the real cost then actually lies on the retailer. Because the real cost of the returns is not the label. Yeah. It's the product. It's the dollars that are in that product. And I've said it, and it's upset some people, but I think that's a good thing. And it's fashion and apparel and electronics, those segments especially, these are perishable goods, if we like to admit it or not. Yeah. Seasonality is real.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Trends change extremely fast. Technology changes even faster these days. And if I can't get my products back fast, now I'm left with essentially an outdated product, or a product that's no longer relevant. I mean, in its simplest form is, let's say you're going on a vacation with your family for Labor Day to the beach right before, fall. Sounds fun. Let's say you bought yourself a couple bathing suits, and let's say you decide to keep one of them, and it's August 12th. Yeah. And then you come back from your trip and it's, September 9th or something, and I got to return these.
Yeah. What's that retailer going to do? Yeah.
What do they do with that bathing suit at that moment in time? Yeah. Right. It's essentially obsolete inventory. It's going to get liquidated. It's going to go underneath the returns cost line and see you later out the door.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I think it's very interesting, like, because that's a great point, like that seasonality, because it's one thing, offer the convenience to your consumer, right? Which I think is it's almost like a necessary evil in a sense, right? From your operation supply chain side, because like you said, when you get it back, it's like, oh, how quickly can I get this back in the inventory, and can I even sell it anymore at this point, right? So tell us a little bit about how, with that kind of issue and problem set that's out there, and trying to figure that out, how does Pollen Returns come in and help to alleviate that?
Yeah. So, at the basic level, we offer a seamless experience for the consumer to exchange product to mitigate the return. We have over a 30% exchange rate, which is something we're proud of. And we're working on some new products and features that we're about to kick off here in 2 weeks, aiming to obviously increase that even more. That said, we also offer a better experience for small, medium, and even large size businesses of labelless. So the consumer doesn't have to print a label. We even can do pack and ship if somebody wants to pay for the packaging for the consumer in order to do that. And last but not least is we have a truly a proprietary pickup service. We require no overhead. We have coverage all across the United States at this moment in time. And we can execute door-to-warehouse pickups. If not the same, then really damn close for what you're already paying for that label. And now when you start getting into pickups, it's more than just an experience. There's a lot of operational efficiencies that you can create by going to the consumer the right way, and how you execute the pickups and how they are put together for that retailer when they get the product back, in order to restock it in a much timelier manner to get it back out to their existing customer base.
Very interesting. So, I mean, in that sense, like how is the, I guess your logistics network set up? So you're going to the consumer directly, picking up their product, whether it's in a package, not in a package, right? And then it's going to a warehouse. I mean, are these pollen returns facilities, or you're leveraging 3PLs, or it's going directly back to the brand warehouse? How does that work?
Yeah. So our pickup technology is truly technology. When I first started this, especially on the pickup front, I had a thesis where it's not about building an army to go pick up these goods. That's been done and proven. It's not about, another micro fulfillment or collection or sortation center. Those are being built. They're everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's about what can we create that lays on top of the existing supply chain infrastructure that benefits the existing ecosystem that's there and works in conjunction with their current offerings. And it's a wordy sentence, don't get me wrong, but what that means is, for example, how can I better fill the gaps for existing rideshare companies between people and food? Okay. How can I place those drivers in better locations from a backhaul to where they have an opportunity for a front haul and put them in that position? How can I even improve the supply chain efficiencies for companies like UPS, FedEx, or USPS, the name of the big three here in the US, of providing them pre-consolidated goods that are also walking in where they don't have to have a box behind the counter, so they can leverage the higher profit margin on moving 8 to 10 products in a box rather than individuals. Mm-hmm. And how can we leverage no box, no label to reduce fraud, which is at 10%? How can we do all those things? And it's amazing how the consumer, reacts to it, because in short, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I think it's the right saying, so you can edit this, by the way,
sure.
Is, people don't shit where they eat, to be honest with you. It's amazing when somebody walks into a UPS, FedEx, or USPS, they could put a brick in there and walk out the door and be like, gotcha, and now I got a free Xbox controller, let's just say, right?
Yeah.
But if somebody's coming to your door and that driver knows what they're picking up, they have a stock image of what they're picking up, and they're told that they're going to be inspecting the good when they're truly taking a picture of it for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
They actually give you what they're supposed to in the condition that they said.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I mean that certainly alleviates a lot of that fraud that's becoming like more and more prevalent, right? And I think that makes total sense. So I mean, you're leveraging, I guess, the gig economy workers out there to do these pickups, and then where's the drop off and sortation and everything happening?
Yeah, so we do all the sortation up front, which is part of the patents that we have as well, and we're doing that based off of our tech and scheduling and looking at RMAs as the consumer is scheduling the return. That also being said, the drop-offs happen at FedEx, UPS, and USPS locations, and they keep their existing pack and ship flows, and we plug into their technology as well. And so for us, there's no training for the clerks. They've already been trained on how to do these. And simply the driver walks in, they scan one QR code, and they walk out the door. And now the clerk knows what to do. Item goes out the back door, wherever the dispositions are handled for that set of items that they picked up on that route that we created for them.
Okay. So when it goes for that disposition, it's going to the actual brand's company or themselves, whoever they use for disposition, or you guys are taking that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we don't hold any product. We truly sit between consumer and supply chain through and through with all of our offerings.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, because then it moves faster to a point where they can also potentially turn around and sell it again, right? If it's in okay condition to sell again, which kind of addresses that issue we were talking about before, where, you lose the life of the product if it gets to a certain point, right? So you want to speed up that turnaround time.
Exactly. And, a lot of folks look at stuff obviously from an inbound perspective of like product that was just manufactured coming in. How is it, how do they sort it? How do they place it? And so, using this analogy for anybody who's, in that mindset, which I totally get, which is obviously priority one, product, where's it placed? How can I get it to my consumers? Right. I mean, that is how you make your money. That's what you do. Imagine, and we don't work with these folks, I'm just using a brand name here for an example. I mean, imagine if Nike, for example, every shoe that came off the assembly line was packaged in one box, and sent to them individually.
Yeah. Crazy.
It'd be insane.
Yeah.
Right. And now, better yet, imagine, let's say it is the way it is today. Imagine Nike never knew when 20% of their inventory was coming or where it was.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that's essentially where 20% of their existing sold inventory is. They don't know where it is and they don't know when it's coming. They know that we have created a return label, but they don't know when we're dropping it off because it's out of their power.
Yeah.
And so by creating that experience of a better experience to the consumer, you're actually controlling when that product's coming back. You can actually plan and predict when that product's coming back. I'm the type of person where I look at things and I say, is it, I think it's great what folks are trying to accomplish, for example, on reselling returns.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything yet that I go, oh my gosh, that's like the brilliant thing here, right? You know, you can have a consumer try to send it to another consumer, but there's no control of when they drop it off.
Yeah.
You know, I could have a used product or a return product, have a consumer listed on the website as a secondary good, but I have no control of what their images look like, which now can make my brand look bad. And I spent tens of thousands, if not tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to build my brand recognition.
Yeah.
Do I want that damaged? I mean, that's a question you have to ask yourself. Is it worth maybe just a little feel-good story? I look at it and say, we haven't even solved the issue that's really at hand. And that is, we've created fast out environments for outbound, holding inventory in all these locations, multiple warehouse, you know, you have ghost, where you name it, they're all there right now. Micro fulfillment centers, same day, next day, it's all there because we have this expectation as for the consumer. So we're meeting it. But last time I checked, if you have fast out, you can't have slow back.
Yeah.
And right now we have slow back. And that's where our pickup technology comes into play. Is you can do so many great things when you meet the consumer, but you're actually beginning to create fast back, which now enables better resale and enables better data. Now I don't have to necessarily guess how much inventory I need to manufacture or buy if I'm, you know, buying wholesale to hold to resell as a retailer. I can actually make real predictions because I know how much inventory I can leverage of what's coming back to me. So I don't need to manufacture as much. I can manufacture less, which frees up capital, while also servicing my existing consumer base as well as my growing consumer base based off my previous data as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting side to it, because you do, and it's a great point too, where you say, like, you know, you provide a consumer with the label, and then you know, you don't know when they're going to drop it off, right? And you don't know if maybe they'll ever drop it off. Sometimes maybe they get the label and then they're just like, oh, it's too late, just forget about it, right? And then you never get that inventory, so you can't really plan around that. So I think giving them that more streamlined process and more predictable process, like you guys are doing, I mean, I think gives them great and better insight and visibility into that inventory, and they can actually, in a sense, kind of count on that inventory, right? To be able to utilize that further down the road and consider that within their planning. So really interesting what you guys are doing, and definitely interesting how you're kind of tackling these issues around returns. Because I mean, returns overall is a complex problem. There's so many factors, I think, as we've highlighted today, in play around returns, not only from the supply chain perspective, but from the consumer perspective, and all these things in between that happen in all these different ways to do it, right? So it's great that you guys are addressing that in a more simplified, sort of standardized way, streamlining it for not only the consumer, making it easier for them, but then also on the back end, the brand, the retailer, being able to figure out a better way to manage those and handle those within their supply chain. So really interesting to talk to you here, Spencer, about this. And if we look into the future of Pollen, what does that look like?
Well, the future of Pollen is we're really looking to empower retailers with their return products. I mean, this again, like I said, I mean, this is an opportunity to touch the consumer. And I'll use the holidays here because we're at the holiday season, right?
Yeah.
And think about this. Let's say you buy, I mean, I have two brothers, so I have two younger brothers. So let's say I buy my brother, you know, a jacket from a company that he's never bought a jacket from. I'm not. He's a 6'4" dude. He's a tall guy, right? Like, you know, maybe it's not the right length, you know, ordeal, right? And let's say I buy him this jacket, he gets it for Christmas, and he's like, hey, Spence, I love this, but like, it just doesn't fit. Or maybe I already actually have this jacket. I'm going to go, get something else, instead. That's fine. Of course, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's gift season. And now imagine he's never shopped with this retailer though. And he does not have this jacket. He does not have any of it. He's going to go and make a return, as he should. He's never shopped with this brand ever. So this experience is actually going to dictate what he believes their buying experience will be like.
Interesting.
This is essentially free customer acquisitions right here.
Yeah.
And if you create hurdles and obstacles, especially during the holidays, you're missing out on what the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
And the bigger picture is how can I sell more products? How can I lower my customer acquisition costs? What's my top line? And then, by the way, like, of course, we all want to improve and save money. But ultimately, what pays the bills is selling more product.
Yeah.
And if you make it a difficult experience and an unsettling experience and unenjoyable, you just lost. Somebody paid you for this customer acquisition cost.
Yeah.
It's gone. That customer's gone forever. They're not going to come back. I mean, we all have the story of the bad return. You don't shop there anymore. Nobody does.
Yeah. You get worried that you're going to have to return something again.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
deal with it again. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I think that's a really great perspective to look at it in that way. And I think that makes total sense to be able to try and address that. So, I mean, the future of Pollen, you guys are looking to try and address that in a better way and push that forward for the retailer and the brands overall.
Yeah. How can we parlay our technology into reducing your returns with more exchanges? And I mean, our business model is actually geared towards, we're incentivized to curate as many exchanges for you as possible, because we actually make more money and it, we have a SaaS fee, but where our real money is made is how we can curate more exchanges. If I provide you a platform and you're a retailer, Kevin, and you paid me, let's just say $4,000 annually SaaS fee for my returns platform, and I offer exchanges, and you have a 22% exchange rate, your exchange rate ain't going up.
Yeah.
It's going to stay the same. I mean, it's going to stay the same or maybe drop, but ultimately it's going to be essentially 22. I'm not incentivized to curate more for you. I'm not incentivized. You're giving me $4,000. I'm done. See you later. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
But on our model and how we work is we make a small percentage of every exchange that accrues. And there's accounting play here. There's a lot of other things going on. It's not like we just take a percentage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of benefits to the retailer, which that's more of, I think, a finance talk, but ultimately it's good. It's very similar to what Returnly did. And we're here to incentivize as many exchanges as possible, because the more exchanges that you can incentivize, the less 100% of refunds are going back to the consumer, where now the retailer is not sitting there with their fingers crossed going, please go buy the right size.
Yeah.
And so, we're curating a very simple experience that allows the consumer to exchange extremely fast and easy, while also even offering on a subset, if somebody clicked return, more of a shopping experience with those dollars to go get the product maybe they really want, because ultimately they may not have the right size in stock because it's sold out now. So let's let them shop the whole catalog with the money that they already have. It's about changing that mindset. I mean, we have over, as I mentioned, a 30% exchange rate. Our goal is not to necessarily increase consumers to click exchange more. It's how can we change the mind of the folks in the 60% who've clicked return. We want to change their mind after they've already started.
Yeah.
And those are the folks that we want to capture. And we've already captured the other 30. Yeah. So let's go capture the folks that aren't clicking yet.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that makes total sense. And I think it's great what you guys are doing to be able to improve the experience overall for all the different points of the transaction, all the different parties involved in that transaction. So really interested to see how you guys continue to grow and continue to get adopted into the industry and how you continue to address the returns problem that's out there. So Spencer, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and telling us all about Pollen and kind of your background and giving us some great perspective into returns from all the different parties that are involved. So if people are interested in learning more about Pollen Returns, what's the best way to do that?
customer@pollenreturns.com or visit returnsuck.com. Either one.
All right. Love that. Returnsuck.com. Easy to remember. So we'll put that at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can find that information very easily. So Spencer, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.